case. That's the scenario we face. So in regard to the mass fish die-offs, for example, in the Pacific, radiation does not kill with that degree of speed. Lack of oxygen does. And that's what we're seeing from superheated oceans that are stratifying, that are causing formerly frozen methane hydrate, which usually is accompanied by hydrogen sulfide. These deposits are releasing from the seabed, migrating to the surface. It deoxygenates the ocean on its way, and you have massive fish kills, massive dead zones. And the rotten egg smell has often been accompanied with these massive fish kills because that's the hydrogen sulfide. It's heavier than air, sits on the surface. So as the planet is warming and thawing, and again, for those who doubt that, search Siberian methane craters. And I think I pointed this out to you guys before. You have to see these to believe it. There's about 7,000 of them now. Looks like a massive bomb crater exploding out of the surface of the tundra. This is happening on the seafloor as well. So climate engineering in the attempt, and mainstream media and the power structure, in the attempt to hide all this, in the attempt to hide the fact that nighttime temperatures are rising twice as fast as daytime highs, they are creating these engineered events. We're about to get the fourth nor'easter on the East Coast, possibly. Do you guys know that? This will be the fourth nor'easter in just over 2 weeks. You heard the news, right?
Oh, yeah. I've been following. I always follow the weather closely, and it's fascinating to watch. They call them, the bomb outs that they keep happening. But as you said, this is like 4.0. They had 2.0, I think, early last week.
And by the way, the reason you weren't on the last time was because of a weather event here. We apologize for that, but go ahead.
Oh, no worries. I completely understand. And I know you guys have been the epicenter because you're close proximity to the much warmer than average lakes that have created the 75-pound ice balls. We've talked about that before. You guys have seen those photos, right?
Yeah, we got a picture of them right here. I've seen these being reported all over the place. And I've also seen on the Weather Channel scientific explanations as to why this happens, that this is a normal thing and not to be concerned about it.
Yeah, we're not to be concerned about anything anymore from the official sources. Not our skies crisscrossed with aerosol dispersions, not to be concerned about 9/11 and what really happened. We're just to go back to sleep, go shopping, and pretend everything is normal. So,
what's up with these with these big ice balls?
It's a direct result of chemical ice nucleation. And when they say it's normal, have them prove that there's any long-term historical record of this. And when I mean long-term, I mean beyond several decades, because we know these processes have existed for at least 6 decades. Even the chemical ice nucleation processes, the first patent we found was from 1950. So beyond that, you will not find a record of these occurrences. This is a recent phenomenon. It's not a natural phenomenon at all. We now see snow falling. You guys must have seen this. We see snow falling regularly and reported as normal now. I saw a report on the Weather Channel today, snow falling in multiple locations at 40 degrees. Has everybody forgotten the temperature at which we would expect to see snow? Chemical ice nucleation, again, your listeners can actually see lab tests we have of this in geoengineeringwatch.org. You have to see the test to believe it. When several drops of these materials are put into a vessel of water, it freezes it instantly. Guys, you know the first aid kit that sits on the shelf for 20 years with an ice pack in it, you can mix the chemicals and get ice, right?
I'm not familiar with that, no.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, yeah.
Very common.
Yeah.
Many first aid kits.
Yeah.
So these are endothermic reacting materials. They're energy absorbing materials. So this is on a scale that's unimaginable, the process that's being used. You guys have seen the snow over the pyramids and places of the United Arab Emirates where it's never snowed before.
Oh, yeah.
You've seen these reports, right?
Yep.
Very, very helpful for the climate engineers. Very helpful to divide and confuse the population as to the true state of climate disintegration. Why? Again, to pacify the population, to confuse, divide, and pacify the population until the brutal, bitter end, which I would argue, again, we are perilously close to. If we look at statistically, the collapsing of crops, of fisheries, we simply can't feed the population that's here much longer. Power structure knows it, and they are doing everything they can to continue, quote, business as usual with the population unaware of what's happening until they can make their final preparations for what they know now is inevitable, which they have helped to make inevitable.
And if, and I've asked you this question before, but I'll ask it again for those people just tuning in for the first time. Dane Wigington, of course, is our guest. If they stopped, if they, meaning the people behind these programs, plural, stopped today, can we recover? Is there any possibility of recovering?
If you're speaking about returning to the formerly thriving planet we have known? No. There, in any time frame that matters, we are past the point of no return. And this is a scientific, statistical fact. And when we look at previous events that are similar in some ways, except this event is happening exponentially faster, that an event I refer to often 55 million years ago, the Pedum event, Paleocene, Eocene thermal maximum, methane mass extinction as we're seeing now. But the equilibrium period's 10 to 20 million years. That's a long time. The bottom line is, again, the severity of what's unfolding cannot be overstated. Now, I know this is a very apocalyptic summary, and I'm not asking anybody to believe me. I never do. I'm asking them to actually investigate the facts, investigate the current extinction rates, investigate the fisheries collapses, investigate the now environmental collapse migrants that are happening all over the country, or all over the planet, excuse me. I'm asking people to look at that and to consider that if there's the positive leap, or the last remaining leap we could make in the right direction, would be to expose and halt these programs to allow the planet to respond on its own. That would buy us some time. It doesn't mean that the climate would reset itself. There's so much energy built up in the system because it's been interfered with on a massive scale for at least 7 decades. So we don't know where we're at from a meteorological standpoint. We don't know how much pressure's built up ultimately. But what we do know is if we continue on the current course, it's game over in the very near term. And that's why Agenda 2030 and all the rest, and anybody talking about those agendas as if they are going to reach fruition, they are not going to reach fruition. And that is, again, a mathematical, statistical fact on the current trajectory. Not going to happen.
So Dane, what are the differences, if any, between Agenda 21 and Agenda 30?
As if it matters, but go ahead.
Correct, as if it matters. And we can speculate on different sources that cite different elements. But I would argue, again, on the current course, the debate about that issue will be irrelevant. If we took the ozone destruction alone, which is most directly related, again, to climate engineering. And guys, you might have seen perhaps 2 to 3 months ago, we saw some articles that said the ozone layer was recovering. Did you see those?
Yeah.
Okay, and at geoengineeringwatch.org, we stood by our data that indicated that was anything but true, not true.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. As a matter of fact, you, if I'm correct, you had a front page, very on point explanation about this, right? Okay, the January. I don't recall the date, but in fact, Eric, you might be able to bring that article up. Go ahead, Dane. I'm sorry.
No worries, but we did cover this. And then about 3 weeks ago, we had an acknowledgement from mainstream sources. Ozone layer is not recovering, especially over populated areas. And that's some of the areas where we see some of the heaviest aerosol operations. So we have an admission that this is, in fact, a deteriorating scenario. And the point I was getting at, if that was our only problem, the current rate of ozone disintegration, based on our calculations and the former NASA tech that has worked with us and metered with our equipment, we have about 8 years left till total ozone collapse, now perhaps 7. That estimate's a year old. So that alone is a global extinction event by itself. If we stop climate engineering, the ozone layer would recover. It doesn't mean our problems are over by any stretch, but it means the planet might be able to sustain some of its life support systems. The reason I'm focused on this issue above all others, and I'm aware of many aspects of what we face. I research in many different arenas, but this is the single biggest hole in the bottom of the boat at this time. Greatest threat we face short of nuclear cataclysm. We must deal with this issue. And your listeners could all help immensely by helping us to share credible data, verifiable data, which we try our best to supply at geoengineeringwatch.org.
Dane, I want to ask you this. When the period of time that you talked or referenced just a little bit ago, I guess you could say when the dinosaurs lived, when there was, a much higher rate of carbon, and they say it was much warmer. This is what you're talking about. Would you say it was a methane, some type of methane?
Mass extinction. Methane mass extinction. Now, let me first. We're post KT boundary there, Cretaceous boundary. So we're already at that point post dinosaur epoch. But let's go. If I think I know, you can complete your question, then I'll try to fill it in. As far as the atmosphere at different points in the Earth's history having much more carbon in it? Is that where we're going?
Well,
because you're correct.
That's part of it, yeah. But I wanted to know if we knew what those numbers were compared to today, and then I also wanted to know what how the methane. I know the methane's flammable, and you get too much of it, things can blow up. Is that what happened? Is that part of what happened back with the dinosaurs? How does that fit in? Okay.
Although, let me back into this, and they're all good questions. So first, in regard to former carbon counts in the atmosphere, has it been much, much higher in the past? Yes. As recently as 5.2 million years ago, the Pliocene epoch, carbon counts were much higher. Was the planet imploding as it is now? No. We didn't have climate engineering thwarting the planet's natural processes. Sea levels were 100 feet higher. That's a problem for modern industrialized civilization. But as the planet warms, the hydrological cycle intensifies, the forests begin to thrive, begin to suck up more carbon. This is the miraculous planet we live on. I think we all agree it's absolutely miraculous and divinely miraculous. It's incredible. So, but now the planet's in a geoengineering straitjacket. In addition to all the damage we've done to the planet, now it cannot respond, because the hydrological cycle is being disrupted, the ozone layer is being decimated, the entire planet's being contaminated, which is poisoning the forest. They can't respond. They're not growing. They're dying. We have a chain reaction of feedback loops that are pushing us toward what can only be described as an abrupt climate shift. In regard to the methane, what happens is when the methane expels into the atmosphere, methane is lighter than air, so it enters the upper layers of the atmosphere or the upper troposphere, and it covers the planet like a layer of glass. That's happening now. You asked about counts. We recently got a methane count of 3,100 parts per billion. We have not been over 700 parts per billion for 1 million years. We are in totally uncharted territory.
Wow.
So in covering the planet like a layer of glass, it traps heat. It's an incredibly powerful greenhouse gas. And I know that's a four-letter word for many, but the bottom line is we're not a lifeless ball of rock in a frozen solar system for no reason. There's a blanket of gas that holds the heat in. I don't think anybody can rationally argue that. And again, it's not about Al Gore. It's about reality. So as this blanket thickens and we are now entering into completely uncharted territory, the climate engineers, back to what I spoke out at the beginning, back to what's happening in Erie, back to what's happening on the East Coast 4 times in a row, perhaps by next week, this convinces the population that none of this is true. None of it's going on. When their little patch of the world is cold, then they feel it must be that way everywhere. It's hard to get past that psychologically, and the power structure knows this. That's why they're doing what they're doing. If we took the whole eastern half of the U.S., the whole eastern half, that is 1/200th of the Earth's surface area. That's not much, is it? That's the whole eastern half of the U.S. I get
it. Yeah, I get it. Okay. Wow.
So on to answer the question on the flammability, methane, no. Hydrogen sulfide, yes. Could hydrogen sulfide pocket, accumulate, and be ignited? Yes. Could we have an apocalyptic scenario at some point if there was enough hydrogen sulfide released from the seabed and other deposits that was, because it's heavier than air, that pocketed in certain regions? Could that be ignited and have truly a sci-fi apocalyptic scenario? Yes.
Be like leaving the gas on the fireplace on inside your house, and then 20 minutes later lighting a match kind of scenario.
But it is, and I realize. I'm sorry.
No, but I guess that's kind of.
Well, look at prophecy.
A
third of the earth, a third of the grass will burn in the end days. Whether that's related or not, that's what the Bible says.
All right. Well, Dane, I don't want to run out of time. I know you're going to be coming back with Kevin's ship here in a couple of weeks. But look, in the remaining time we've got, how can we best help you get the word out? How can we? What can we best do?
That's the most key question. That's the most key question of all. And my goal is to unite the tribes, if you will. We have to get past the polarization the power structure tries to subject us all to. We're in a common fight for life, nothing less. If we can share credible data, and again, I ask no one to believe me. I ask simply to investigate the facts. We have a 20-page fact and photo summary booklet that there's a PDF on our homepage that you can share from your home computer for free. You can download that and print it from wherever you're at for free. We have You can use our download for free, I should say. You can't print it for free. But we have single-page flyers you can do the same with. Or we supply them at geoengineeringwatch.org for our approximate cost of printing and distributing. We only want to get those materials in circulation because the use of those materials is exponentially more effective at